And welcome back to Los Angeles. Day 3, the final day here of Elite 11 Finals, 24/7 Sports with comprehensive coverage alongside Bud Elliott. I'm Josh Pate. An army of seemingly thousands in the field we'll get to momentarily. Bud, we've seen a lot, man. We came out here expecting a lot. We've seen a lot. So let's just break the ice here, initial takeaways, and then we're going to dive a whole lot deeper over the next 30 minutes or so.
Josh, really glad to be here in LA with you. This is a very nice year for quarterback prospects. It's not always like this when we come out here. It's always the best, but not all years are created equal. And this year, we really have a special crop of talent. We've seen Jackson Arnold. We've seen Dante Moore. This is a nice group, and I'm very impressed with what we have so far.
It's incredible what's unfolded just over the past, let's say, 24 to 36 hours in Elite 11 coverage, and we've been talking about that, and we're going to continue to talk about that. But Los Angeles, California, where we just so happened to be today, is also the epicenter of college football for many reasons. Like I said, we're not oblivious to that. We know what's going on. So let's toss it out to the field here. As I said, our Greg Biggins, Chris Singletary, our national college football recruiting analysts on the field as we speak, because as you can see, Elite 11 finals still taking place. Guys, what's it been like out there so far on this day 3?
I mean, I think it's been good. Chris Singletary, I was watching some targets. You were actually watching more real football than I was, but the target competition was going off pretty well. The usual suspects over there. Dante Moore was good. Malachi Nelson was good. Jackson Arnold was really good at football. But how about you, Chris Singletary? 7-on-7?
With 7-on-7, it started off really hot. Jackson Arnold looked really good, really comfortable. You saw his arm strength, his ability to make all the throws, really getting good RPMs and velocity on his ball. And then had the opportunity to see Amari Williams, Pierce Clarkson. So guys are really feeling comfortable in this segment of the Elite 11 camp. And I think day 3 is probably when guys are really, for the most part, getting their legs under them. You know, some guys flying cross country. Now they got the jet lag out, and now they're feeling like they're themselves.
It's called Separation Thursday, Chris Singletary. That's what we call that. No, Emory, you brought up Amari Williams. I think Emory had the top target score over there, 44 points or something like that, and that was early on. But Emory was absolutely ripping. I think Jackson Arnold might have been second or third. I was trying to look over Brian Stump's shoulder, look at the scores. He was trying to shield them from me. But, no, Emory was ripping it. He had a good day.
Hey, Emory is a guy, like I said, we talked about a little bit yesterday, that two-headed monster that they're now having down at Miami with him and Rashad is going to be huge. The key for me is, can they keep him? Can they keep Amari Williams? Because I'm sure a bunch of schools are probably going to come after him, at least check his temperature.
100%. And Emory strikes me as a guy, without having a lot of relationship with him, he doesn't run. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not going to run and duck because somebody came in who might be ready to hire. I think he's going to want to stick it out and compete. And what I've seen so far this week, I think he's good. You know, I think he's not a throw-in. He's not a number 2 guy. I think he's going to want to stay and compete. Like you said, man, there will be some schools without a quarterback who are going to say, hey, they just signed this guy, big NIL deal potentially. You're not going to get a fair chance. Let's come over here, check out my school. That'll happen. But I think Emory probably wants to stay and compete.
Most definitely. I'm excited to also see CV, Chris Vizzini, and also Austin Novosad. You know, Novosad, he's a barrel of commit. We know Ohio State. We know Texas A&M are looking at him. So it'll be interesting to see what he does at the end of the day when it's time to make that final choice.
Did Chris tell you that you can call him CV? He told me that I can call him CV.
Well,
I don't know if that's for everybody.
But I figured when he told you, then you told me, then I had the blessing.
All right. We got to go back to the desk. Throw it. Josh Pate, Bud Elliott.
It's just so much looser out there. That field is like a whole new world. We're sitting here behind a desk. It's interesting, though, they were talking there about Amari Williams. Amari Williams is a guy that, Bud and I talked to him. Steve talked to him last night. Felt kind of blossomed. He's got a little more personality on him, maybe, than it felt like when he walked in the door. But Jaden Rashad is, I believe, throwing behind us as we speak. And that's a guy with a ton of talent, obviously. He wouldn't be here if he didn't have it. But he just committed to Miami. Amari Williams, very notable because, as Greg and Chris were just talking about, he's also committed to Miami. And one of the big subplots that it really helps to be here for is you get some buzz, you get some intel, and we hear people talk about whether they think both of those guys are going to stick. So I'm interested, Bud Elliott, do you feel the same way about that dynamic now as you did when you got here Tuesday?
I really do. So we talked to Emory on day 1. We actually sat and watched him do the spatial recognition test, which was pretty cool. They do a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff here at Elite 11, and I enjoyed watching him do that. And yesterday he was much more open when he chatted with us. But I agree with Greg. He doesn't run. He's a very good passer. He's got big tools. I mean, arm strength-wise, he's not that far off of Rashad, and I spoke with him last night. He just loves Coach Frank Ponce down there at Miami. He believes what they're doing. Now, look, as the quarterback dominoes fall, we will absolutely see more schools turn up the heat on Amari Williams. I actually had a coach at a G5 school that I saw a couple weeks ago, and he said, Bud, do you think any big schools will offer Amari Williams? Because at the time, Miami was looking at him, but they were not offering him. And then they went ahead and offered, and I said, hey, Coach, that you're not going to be able to keep this kid hidden for long. He's going to be unearthed, and indeed he was. But I think Miami has a strong shot to keep him.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it really helps to have talked to Emory last night. And Steve and I are here, we got him over here. We've talked to kids before when they're going through the motions, but when you know maybe a decommitment is imminent. I don't know what the inverse of that was, but if I found a poster child for that, it would be Amari Williams. He stood right here at this desk last night, and he stopped talking to us. He looked right in that camera, and he said, look, if you want to come to Miami, here's A, B, C, and D reasons. So we've got a lot more to talk about there, but I'll tell you what else is happening. Malachi Nelson is behind us, and there's a whole lot of buzz around the college football world about USC and UCLA headed to the Big Ten of all conferences. So Malachi Nelson, man, this news broke while he was on the field today. Chris and Greg are out on the field with more. What's it been like out there with Malachi Nelson?
I mean, let's find out. Malachi Nelson. Everybody wants to know. The people want to know Malachi Nelson. You're a USC commit. You're a Pac-12 guy, but you might be going to the Big Ten. Is that going to affect you? And what do you think? And what are your thoughts?
No, that's a great question. And, it's something I literally found out 13 minutes ago. So I don't have too much context on it. But I mean, it's you dream and playing at the highest level and playing against good competition. And I mean, playing against better competition is nothing that I would shy away from or not want. You know what I'm saying? And we got CJ out here, and we might see him next year. You never know. So playing at that level, you can't help but to be excited.
So I'm not putting down anybody because I'm a West Coast Pac-12 guy, but you might be going playing, Cal, Stanford, 30,000 to go and playing at the Ohio State University,
Yeah.
Penn State, 100,000 fans.
Yeah.
Are you kind of excited for that stage?
No, I love that. I was asked yesterday, I think, what's my favorite part about playing football and being a quarterback, and it's the pressure. I enjoy being in those hard environments, and those are definitely a few of them. And I definitely look forward to if it all works out, being able to get that opportunity, to play at that high level.
With you now going potentially playing in the Big Ten Conference, and you had guys that you competed against at the local level were going to schools like Oregon or UCLA, things like that. Now you're not going to have that natural rivalries with guys that you played with maybe in Little League or in high school. How does that make you feel now going to uncharted territory and probably seeing that Big Ten and that big house and 100,000?
Yeah. No, I mean it's new, and I can't say too much because I know really little about it. But I mean, like I said earlier, I mean I love the competition, and if it means better competition and better, I mean you got to play against the best to be the best, and being at that high level and showing what we think USC can get back to it's going to be exciting.
So you're processing this. We're going to stop grilling you. Let's talk Elite 11 if we can for a second. It's day 3. If you can, Malachi, how's the week gone for you? Expectations? I know you want to come in here as the guy. Are you happy with your overall performance so far this week?
Yeah, I am. I said from the very jump, when we were talking earlier, I just wanted to learn as much as I can. If I accomplish that, I mean, I feel I won, really. And, I can't wait to get home and open my notebook up and read through all the things I wrote down because it's gems from all these guys. And, guys that have been at the top level like Coach Peterson and, all these quarterback coaches giving different perspectives. Maybe some things work for me, some don't, and it's just having those things that, a lot of guys share different tools. And, Coach JT was talking about a toolbox yesterday and just adding tools into it. Some you're going to use, some you're not. Some are going to get rusty, and you're not going to use them. But it's just having those things. It's an advantage.
With you having a wealth of, I call it, tools and traits, what is one thing this summer that you focused on that you wanted to get better at, being ready for Los Al's upcoming season, and then therefore taking it with you to USC? Yeah. What was something that you really wanted to prove on throughout the season, throughout the summer?
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of things, and I think the biggest thing for me that kind of goes over all of those things is just consistency, and it's something I've worked and worked, and you even out here, you see little things and those dirt balls and sailing the balls, and it happens to the best of us. But I mean, you see the greats, like you've seen CJ and Bryce and Devin or throwing all these balls yesterday in the pro day, and they didn't miss too many. It's just there's a higher level of consistency that I want to get to, and I know I can get to, and that I see glimpses of, and I want to pull all of that out. And it goes back to all those tools in the toolbox and using them and knowing when to use them, and you end up creating and building this almost machine that is very, very consistent.
Appreciate you, Malachi Nelson. We got to go back to the booth, Josh Pate, but Elliot.
All right, excellent stuff, guys, there. Malachi Nelson, the center of attention for a number of reasons here. Jaden Rashad is also throwing behind us right now, Bud, and I don't want to overlook that because we were just talking about Jaden Rashad, recent Miami commit. I mean, we're seeing him live now, so we can take a look, but also what have you seen from him this week?
So what I've seen from him this week is pretty much what we saw on film, and that is a guy who is an excellent deep ball thrower, but yet he's also still kind of raw as a prospect, which, if you're a Miami fan, there's some tantalizing upside there, Josh, because he has been a two-sport guy, obviously experienced in baseball as well. He reminds me a little bit in some ways of another guy who was a two-sport dude who was a little bit raw coming out of high school, but you knew he had some talent in Jameis Winston, a guy who threw a great deep ball when he was at Florida State. Let's go live now to the field so we can look at Rashad here, finishing up his day at the 7-on-7. Has had a strong day, and obviously in 7-on-7, depending on where you are on the field, you may not be able to showcase that deep ball talent that I was just referencing, but let's watch a couple reps of him here.
Yeah, it's been interesting. We've watched them go up and down the field. We had J.J. Cole a second ago and may see him again, but Rashad is a guy that came in here with a lot of attention because we just saw his commitment in the past week, and it's a big story in the state of Florida, but this is going to be your future Miami Hurricanes quarterback.
Let's watch here. Just barely out of bounds there on that throw. Rashad has some serious juice to his game, and if you're a Miami fan, the odds that you don't hit at least one of Rashad and Amari Williams are pretty low, so you got to be feeling great about what Mario Cristobal is doing there in Coral Gables.
Well, I'd also ask this. When we're watching him, and we've watched everybody from Jaden Rashad to C.J. Stroud out here throwing to some guys who will play at the next level, some guys who won't play at the next level, when you see one of those balls that is off the fingertips or it just barely is in front of a receiver, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, the guys he's throwing to in Coral Gables will be taking that to the house.
The most notable example of that was actually on the first night when they had the college counselors go through some of these drills, and C.J. Stroud, who plays at Ohio State, and they got a couple guys who can really go get it. The high school kids out here, for the most part, are not exactly like what you have with the Buckeyes, and C.J. Stroud threw a bunch of balls that he was like, those are dimes. Those are catches in Columbus, not necessarily out here, but you're right. They do try to pair him up with the best local talent you can find. We've seen Deuce Robinson out here and a number of the Pac-12 areas best high school recruits, but it is a little bit different.
Yeah. All right, let's just broaden it out here. I mean, we've seen everyone. We talked to all 20 quarterbacks last night, and if you missed that, those are all available on 247sports.com and our YouTube channel. Give me some other names. Now, we're 3 days. It's the final day going on behind us. Some other names that you've either come away more impressed by or you maybe wanted to see more from.
So let's go back to night one. We said without Arch Manning here, without Nico here, who is somebody who could challenge for that number one overall quarterback spot? And I think two names have really emerged this week. The first is Jackson Arnold, the Oklahoma commit. If you watch Jackson Arnold's film, it's great. He has a cannon. He runs people over. He's not the biggest guy. I mean, he's six. We'll give him 6'1", I think, probably, charitably here. So probably 6'1", but he's not one of these 6'1" guys who's really 5'10" and a half. He has an absolute cannon of an arm. He can vary his arm angle. He has great balance when he throws, and he's been dynamite out here. A consistent top 5 performer every day. He's been really nice.
You mentioned 6'1", and it's not anywhere in our description of the guy that we see on camera right now. That's J.J. Cole. It's a really interesting story. Iowa State commit. So you've got Matt Campbell and what's going to happen up there post Brock Purdy. But J.J. Cole comes over here last night to the desk, and we're watching him right now. And towers over Wiltfong, towers over me. But you love his story, too.
His dad is a well-renowned kicking coach, too. He's going to Iowa State. It doesn't really look like a kicker, right? He said his feet were too big to be a kicker, so he tried this quarterback thing. Seems to be working out okay, Josh. But if you look at J.J. Cole's tools, this guy has as strong of an arm as really anybody here. He's shown it all week. And I'm impressed with the consistency. A lot of times when you have these very tall quarterbacks, these guys who are 6'5", 6'6", they kind of have that baby giraffe thing going on. They're not really fully coordinated yet. But once they get out here, the truly special ones are able to kind of rein it in. They have that nice coordination. He's been very productive and been in the top 5 all week.
He said something to us last night I've never had a kid say. He came over and Wiltfong asked, what is the biggest adjustment you've had to make? And he said, I had to learn how to use my body. Because when he started growing, I mean, this is a legit 6'5", 6'6" guy, and so he hit that growth spurt. He said, I had to relearn how to use my body, so I wasn't Bambi on the ice, so I wasn't falling down all over the place. But it's you come out here, you see all different body sizes, all different shapes. he talked about Iowa State last night, and it just sounded like a kid who bled and exuded Iowa State. It's not an accident, in other words. Like, sometimes there are guys, and they'll choose from schools all over the country, and it's just basically a blue blood here or a blue blood there. Kids committed to Baylor, kids committed to Iowa State. They sound like they've already been in the program 2 or 3 years.
They really do, and it's really important that you match your personality to where you're going, right? Sometimes that personality may not work at an Ohio State or may not work at an Alabama, and sometimes kids need a little bit longer to develop at whatever school they're going to. If you're not a guy who is a already finished type prospect, maybe one of those very top schools is not for you. Sometimes we see kids fall in love with the name of the school, and they're likely to be over-recruited in the next cycle. I think J.J. Cole and Iowa State are just a tremendous fit. We're going to see one more rep from him here as he finishes off his 7-on-7 day.
Yeah, let's toss it out to Greg Biggins and Chris Singletary. What are you guys seeing from J.J. Cole there?
Accuracy, right? I think he's been one of the top 3, 4, 5 most accurate quarterbacks. He's a big kid in the first day. We kind of picked on him a little bit of a we call it Danny Werfel type of release. But I'll tell you what, man, he gets the ball out, gets it out on time, and like I said, man, he's been accurate all 3 days.
I think that's something that's been tremendous for a guy that's taller, really being able to stay on top of his throws, not letting the ball get away from him, and really being able to also not only throw with velocity, but at times when he's needed to, he's done an excellent job of throwing with touch. And as they always say, you want to be able to throw receivers open, so he's done a pretty good job at that as well.
Yeah, guys, you are very aware of that recruitment. I mean, do you get the sense sometimes when you're talking to a guy and you know the profile of an Iowa State, or in this case, Iowa State, obviously, do you ever think, yeah, that kid's cut out. That cloth right there, that fits in Ames, Iowa?
Definitely. When you look at Matt Campbell and what he's done with the staff and with his quarterback position, and then you see J.J. Cole, and then, ultimately we were able to talk to him when he was checking in, you kind of get that feel, the substance of what he is as a player and what he's trying to get to from a long-term standpoint, and then talk about what his vision is and does that match up what they want at Iowa State. And then definitely that did the same thing. It matched up hand in hand, and for him it was a comfortability standpoint with Matt Campbell, what he's done at the quarterback position, and how he felt at home in terms of also fitting in that offense and long-term development.
All right, excellent stuff there. Hey, look, body control on full display. He's learned to use that body.
And
J.J.
hustle.
Cole.
That's Iowa State hustle right there, man, for sure.
So it's good to see J.J. Cole there. What we were about to talk about, as you saw J.J. Leading his current team down the field, future Cyclone, I wanted to get to Dante Moore. Dante Moore is one of the names that has been buzzworthy all week here. Dante Moore, unlike some of these guys, not committed yet. And so you've had twofold buzz. One, what is he like as a player? And number two, where in the world is he going?
He has probably been the most consistent player here all week, from day 1 to day 2. Now today I haven't had a chance to watch him yet because we're on the booth, but we'll go see him in a little bit. Playing against Dante Moore must be like what it's like playing against the computer in a video game, right? He's just the stroke is compact, it's smooth. He has a consistent, repeatable delivery. The ball comes out of his hand. One of the best out of anybody here. Extremely productive at the high school level. A quality 7-on player as well. And I think he has some maturity about him, man. Other kids flock to him. I think they see him as a leader, and whether it's Oregon or Texas A&M, LSU, maybe in Notre Dame, or hopefully for Singletary, Michigan here. He's a special prospect, and whoever gets him is going to be very happy.
Yeah, I'm looking at the YouTube comments here, and I'm glad I did because there are a couple of names that we've covered and we talked about this week. But Brock Glenn, Malachi Singleton are two names that, pound for pound, our viewers and subs ask about as much as anyone. So let's just talk about it. Brock Glenn, what have you seen from him this week?
So Brock Glenn was a guy I was actually very excited to see in this week, because I heard from a lot of different college coaches, hey, I'm really excited about this Brock Glenn kid. I think this Brock Glenn kid has some real juice. And I think his highlights do have a lot of juice to him. His upside, as I was talking to one of the coaches out here, is as good as anybody here. The issue this week has been his consistency. His lows are lower than the lows of the other guys who are truly elite so far. So he certainly has that ceiling and the upside to be a really good college quarterback eventually, but he has further to go. He's not as developed, not as polished as some of the top guys that we just mentioned.
Yeah, Malachi Singleton came over here and talked to us last night, and it's really funny as you start to sense the change in the culture overall at Arkansas, and then it starts to ripple effect throughout the recruiting industry. You have more kids talking about Arkansas, more people in our industry talk about Arkansas, more people covet that Arkansas offer, and then when you talk to a kid like Singleton, as soon as you mention Arkansas or Sam Pittman or Kendall Briles, you just have this ear-to-ear smile, and he's excited about what could happen in the system, but He's also excited just about how differently that Arkansas program is starting to look, and he knows he's about to be a part of it.
Name me the last quarterback who was not productive in the Briles offense.
Exactly.
It's kind of a trick question. You put this kid in there, just like KJ Jefferson, he does have the ability to be accurate with the arm. He can throw the ball down the field. He also has some serious wheels on him. If you need to run him 5, 8, maybe 10 times in a special game, he can do so. He can get the first downs with his legs and be productive through the air. That's a great get for Arkansas and a nice fit of his skill set.
I'll tell you a guy there has been varying degrees of opinion on this week, and it's been Eli Holstein, the Alabama commit. You know, we followed the Arch Manning saga, and Bama was in there. Well, he doesn't go to Bama. Eli Holstein is committed to Bama. Eli Holstein on the field right now. So let's watch him, and I want to go to Chris Singletary and Greg Biggins as we're watching Eli Holstein. And I want to start with Greg, and we'll go to Chris next. You're seeing him now. What are you seeing today, and what have you seen from Eli Holstein this week?
So, like you said, seeing him now, I think the biggest thing with Eli, and always you want to be as positive as you can, just the release. I'm a big fan of like just the stroke of a quarterback, the way the ball comes out. You want him to tighten that release just a bit. Arm strength is there. He's a good athlete, obviously, right? That spark score was big time for him, but the release can be a little bit long at times. So I think he struggled a little bit last night during the pro day, which is all about momentum and confidence. And now those first a few throws don't go your way. All of a sudden, man, you start to press. You start to grip the ball a little tighter, right? And I think that happened last night with Eli. But obviously, Alabama, you know, they are an elite football program. They develop kids like no other. So confident he'll go there and still have a chance to be a special talent. He does have some tools. This week, though, I think he would probably agree, you know, probably hasn't been his best 3 days.
I think when you look at Eli and what they have at Alabama in terms of how they've been building that position, they just got Ty Simpson in the last class. Eli's coming now, and then you're already having Bryce Young there. I think he has some guys in particular like Ty Simpson and what they've done with Coach O'Brien, being their offensive coordinator, that will be able to develop, play to his strengths, really get his skill set sound, and really have him be able to play at a high level for them down in Tuscaloosa.
We hit him some, but we have footage of.
It's also something, Bud, I saw you kind of making your rounds earlier. You can get a lot of off-the-record talk about a lot of guys. Obviously, the on-the-record's a little more filtered, but, I mean, we want to give the best coverage in the industry that we can here. So, yeah, I mean, no one comes here as a perfect and finalized product of a player. Everyone's got varying degrees of work to do. With Eli Holstein, we've heard a lot about the throwing motion. We've heard that before, and we've heard it this week. I'm interested in the feedback you've gotten about maybe how correctable this is. And when he goes to Alabama, and they're world-renowned for developing, among other positions, the quarterback position as of late. I mean, what you've seen from him, how much of that is something that when he goes to Bama, you say, oh, they'll get that worked out?
Well, I think you have to have a lot of confidence in Alabama because it's Alabama. They seem to fix most everybody, and they really, as Chris Singletary said, they play to the talents of their players. Eli Holstein is not going to come to Alabama and run the exact same thing that Bryce Young is able to run right now, at least not on day one, right? The motion does need some work. It is a little bit long, but he is more of a bruising runner than Bryce Young is. So you may be able to see a little more QB run if Eli Holstein ever ends up starting at Alabama, which is certainly in question. Alabama signs a 4- or 5-star kid almost every year. They just took Ty Thompson. If Eli Holstein is going to start at Alabama, he has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a situation, you just mentioned Ty Simpson coming in there. It's a situation where no one is under the misguided notion that everybody who ever signs with every program until the end of time is sticking. We're talking about with Texas. We're talking about with Bama. We'll talk about it with Ohio State. It's just the simple practice of loading up as much as you can and then letting the natural competition that has become synonymous with your program take its course.
And you said it right there. Eli Holstein wants to go to Alabama and compete. That's the kind of guys that Nick Saban wants. He doesn't want somebody who's just looking for a starting spot. Is Eli Holstein going to be the most talented quarterback on that Alabama roster? In my opinion, no. But he might turn into something really special. With that kind of attitude, obviously that kind of pedigree, we can't rule it out, Josh.
Yeah, it's also should be noted, I guess we're just coming off a season where Bryce Young, who once upon a time came out here, and I remember as clear as day scrolling through the message boards and hearing whispers about his height. Is that going to limit him? Bama can't grow a guy. They can't add inches. He can't play in lifts. Bryce Young, I don't know if you noticed last year, but tended to do okay. Yeah, so it panned out for him. It's always interesting when we talked, for instance, to Eli last night. I asked him, about Bill O'Brien and what kind of interaction do you have with him? And he's very excited about it. And that's a guy, it should be noted, is very aware. There's work to do. I'm fully aware of it. I committed in part to that program for the competition, like you said. But also, because those guys have developed kids before me, and I'm confident that they can develop me as well. I know we've actually had C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Devin Leary, a bunch of the counselors here.
Caleb Williams.
Yeah. So it's been no shortage of current college talent, and I think we'll talk to Bryce Young in just a few moments. But, I'm also interested in a very generic sense. When you see guys come in here who have that Bama offer or who have already committed to Bama, I'm not saying that they wear this big label on their forehead, but do they get treated different? Do they get held to a higher standard? Do you ever sense that?
I think they definitely do. They have a target on their back. If you're a Bama kid or an Ohio State kid, just given how often their quarterbacks seem to win the Heisman or go number one overall recently, there's that kind of sense of, oh, you're the Ohio State kid. Because some of these dudes have never seen each other play before except on the highlights online, and I think there is something you have to prove.
Yeah, Bryce Young, we mentioned him. He's currently standing by with Chris Singletary and Greg Biggins. So here's a guy who came through here already and is doing it big at the college level. Let's toss it to the field.
So we are here with Bryce Young, kind of a legend in some of the California circles. Bryce, we're talking about Alabama football specifically. When you committed to Alabama, obviously you get there. Are you super recognizable? Do you feel like there's a little bit maybe of a target on your chest? Do you feel like there's a standard to live up to being an Alabama quarterback, especially?
Yeah, definitely a standard to live up to. I think that's the big thing. Definitely a standard. That's just when you sign up to go to Alabama, that's what they stress during recruiting. So there's definitely a standard that when you're young, you're not there yet. So you have to learn it, figure out how to get there, and that's a big thing. But also another great thing about Alabama is I think it's the opposite. We're all highly recruited. We're all highly touted. We're all, known where we're from. And you bring all those guys together, and, when you do that, it kind of hits the reset button. So when I got to college, it was, regardless of what I had done in high school, it's all about what you can do now that you're there. So everyone was the best where they were from, and, we all get the best guys. We all get to compete, kind of fill each other out. And then you go out there and, all the stars and everything kind of goes away. So that's what I loved a lot about Alabama.
So I got $1 million question for you. It's an easy question, maybe. Now with the news that USC and UCLA are now in the Big Ten, if USC had been in the Big Ten where you were coming out, would that have changed your mind or even give you a little inkling of maybe doing something different than going to Alabama?
I think it wasn't really anything about USC or any other school. I think it was just what Alabama was for me. I think, it wasn't too much about, I was committed to USC for a time, and, I loved USC, and it wasn't anything that they didn't do or what they were, where or where they weren't. It was more where just knowing what Alabama could do for me, how they could help me, how much better I can get, knowing what the best opportunity was for me. So I was super happy with making the decision, super happy that I did. So I think regardless of what happened, I would be happy at Alabama.
Hey, Bryce, so we're at Elite 11, so let's ask a couple Elite 11 questions. I remember when you were coming up, we're in Frisco, Texas, right, at the Star. What do you remember most about your Elite 11 experience?
Yeah, it was just a great, really what stuck with me most of the relationships I built. It was a little different. We had the opening tied into it too, so there's a lot more people. But even with the Elite 11, the guys that I got close with there on that weekend, I'm still close with to this day. We still text in the group chat that we have from that very weekend. So I think really the biggest thing that stuck with me was the relationships I built, being able to just have a weekend with the guys and that I met there, and really build a relationship with them. And now everyone's all over the country, and it's wild to think at so many schools there's people I know that I was able to really genuinely work with, learn from, and I think that was really the biggest thing that stuck out for me.
One last question that we have for you. You've done it on the highest level from a collegiate standpoint. What advice have you been able to share with these guys just through your experiences in Tuscaloosa of just how to handle football, outside of football, anything? What is one golden nugget that you share with these guys?
I think my message really has just been to keep the main thing. When you have success on the field and you working to be better and get better for your team, everything is going to follow. The stuff off the field, a lot of it's out of our control. So when we focus on what we're supposed to focus on, you have success there. That's what's most important. And, when you're able to do that and you're able to put your mind there, all the rest of it will work itself out.
Hey, you hear it from Bryce Young. Now we'll throw it back to Pate and Bud.
Yeah, we'll take that word as gospel. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate Bryce for joining us. All right, as we wrap up here, some final thoughts, and I wanted to kick it back, Bud, to a conversation that we started to have, and that was about Arch Manning. He's not here. Clemson notably kind of was out of that race pretty early, and it's followed by picking up a guy that you've had your eye on this week and you've liked a lot.
So we're sitting there in the hotel lobby at check-in Elite 11. Chris Singletary goes, is that like a former Clemson player? Chris Vizina he's no joke, man. That guy is big. He's got a big-time arm, really good athlete. I spoke with some Elite 11 coaches here. Like, hey, if you had to bet on somebody, and we're taking guys off, like, okay, no Dante Moore, no Jackson Arnold, who's a guy that you'd bet on to have great success? And it was Chris Vizina. It just the physical tools are there. I think the attitude, the mentality are there. That's a great consolation prize for Clemson after missing out on Arch Manning.
We got Chris last night. We talked to him for a good 5 minutes. You want to talk about a guy who exudes the program he's going to. Chris Vizina might as well be a billboard for Clemson University. Let's go back to Greg Biggins and Chris Singletary on the field. Guys, final thoughts as we're about to wrap up day 3.
I mean, my final thoughts, I love all three of those guys you guys just talked about. CV, Christopher Vizina, Jackson Arnold, Dante Moore. Who's number one, Chris? I mean, I think there needs to be a debate right now. I love controversy. Did Jackson Arnold or Dante Moore do enough to potentially supplant Arch Manning, Chris? I don't know. I think it's a fun conversation to have, though.
It's an excellent conversation, and that's what you want. You want to see competition. You want to see guys rise to the occasion, and that's what we have in those two guys. But then you also have some other guys. You got Avery Johnson. You have Malachi Singleton, Chris Vizina, who you talked about, Austin Novosad. So all of these guys have really done a lot in my mind in terms of giving me another reference point of how I see them and how I see their long-term potential. So I know when we get back to our group, we're going to have some spirited conversations talking about the top quarterbacks.
All right, Greg Biggins, Chris Singletary, excellent job from the field, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate all you guys for joining us. As Chris said, the work is not done. When we leave here, these guys are going to go get ready for their senior seasons, but the Rankings Council, they get in whichever cave it is they go to chop things up, and we're going to find out about that race for number 1. For Bud Elliott, for Chris Singletary, for Greg Biggins, our entire crew here that you can't see that worked tirelessly to make this possible, I'm Josh Pate. Thanks so much for joining us. Keep it locked on 247sports.com and the 247 Sports YouTube channel for all